Okay.
4. We're up in 2. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. So many of you are tuning in from all around the country, indeed from all around the world. I'm sending you much love to my morning stars, even when you come around in the evening and the afternoons. But today we're talking this morning about education. We've just been talking about the economy with Dr. Max Wolf, but I have someone where I can kind of get a 1-2 punch, kind of bring her on over. You kind of get 2 for the price of 1, or many for the price of 1 with Dr. Julianne Malveaux, because I'm going to ask her about the economy too. But she occupies a rarefied space, not only as a college professor, but as a college dean, which is what she has been, but she's also the president emeritus of one of our nation's leading colleges, Bennett College for Women, HBCU, Greensboro, North Carolina, the city of my birth. And so she's seen education as a student in public education. She's been a student at university. She has been at the most honored institutions in the world. She's an economist. She is a professor. She is a dean. She has been a college president. And so she really does understand, not just having had experience, but she understands the Department of Education and its role. Our mutual friend, someone for whom we both have tremendous admiration, Dr. Mary Frances Berry, created the Department of Education. She was tasked with that by President Jimmy Carter. Up until the Department of Homeland Security, this was the last department created at the cabinet level. And he and she and others saw a need to protect the most vulnerable children. I guess it would have been akin, and you can help me with this, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, and explain this, to the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, the protections that our children needed at a federal level in the space of education. Many people look at the Brown v. Board of Education decision as a racial one, purely, that this was about Black children and white children sitting together and people all coming together and just being together across racial lines. Well, yeah, but it was also much more than that on a profound level, because classism really is racialized in this country. It was an economic decision. Black dollars did not have as much weight on their side of town as white dollars had on theirs. And so Black schools, or schools with Black students in them, Dr. Malveaux, I need you to move to your right. There you go. That's it. Just a little bit more. Black schools were historically under-resourced. So the Brown v. Board of Education decision was supposed to have ended all of that. And the Department of Education helped to ensure and assure that that would be the case. So I said, let me reach out to Dr. Malveaux, because she understands the Department of Education and its ramifications, not just from an educational standpoint, but from an economic standpoint. She understands IEPs, these individualized education programs for the most vulnerable students. Not that they're incapable, but they need to have special programs so that they can be reached and taught. Everybody can be taught.
Exactly.
And so the question is now, what is the Department of Education, and what will it mean for us to live without it? Moms for Liberty and other conservative groups have been lobbying for years to end the Department of Education, to eliminate it. And so now they're about to get their wish. But what will they be getting? What will we all be getting? Because guess who gets helped the most by the Department of Education? Yep, you guessed it, people in the red states. So let's talk about it. And this is no slam of anybody who is a Republican or a Democrat. No, this is an American issue, everybody. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to feel it. We're all going to feel it. We should be trying to be globally competitive, but this is not the way. It's not the way. It's not the way. More and more Americans are slipping further and further and further behind. Indeed, a young lady that you have mentored, someone who is so close to me, so near and dear, my baby sister Jacqueline, who is now Dr. Jacqueline Jackson. She is teaching at university at this point in Japan. And she did her graduate studies when she was pulling together the information for her doctoral degree. She would go to different countries, Dr. Malvo, and I know she shared this with you because you helped to guide her through this process. And she said, look, you turn on the radio in Norway and you can learn Spanish, English. I mean,
Yeah.
all Italian, any language you want to. Well, it's certainly the European languages, you can learn them. They have programs, they have a whole culture and society that is geared toward learning. Well, so let's talk about this. The Department of Education, let's start here. So we're operating, singing from the same sheet of music. Hey, Robert, shalom to you. Mike and Jewel, everybody like and share, like and share, like and share. We are on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social. I'm still on X at Santita J. Please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and meet meet us there. And the Santita Jackson and Friends page, please, 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 please meet me there. That's the only place where I can accept friends. So like and share, everybody. Like and share. That helps us with the algorithm. Like and share. We need you to watch, but like and share. Dr. Malvo, first of all, greetings to you, my beloved soror. And it's interesting because I just came back from our soror, Roberta Flack, her funeral service, her homegoing. It was a magnificent service because
Yeah.
it was a homegoing. I had the privilege of, I guess, giving people a look into her life. I was asked to do that, and I was so honored to do that. Um, that having been said, she was a public school teacher.
Yes.
She was writing her dissertation when she was moved into the record business. She went to Howard at 15, but she had gotten an offer for a full scholarship at 13. She has the kind of mind like you, Dr. Malvo. And so, I think about her today because she was such a champion of public education and education.
And
Education.
education.
She believed in it. She believed in it, but she really believed in it as she could have taught anywhere in Washington, but she took all of her genius to the least of these, to the children who needed it the most, just as you've done. You could teach anywhere, but you went to a black school because you said, they need me, they need to see me, they need to know that black women can be economists coming out of MIT, just as you. So, what is the Department of Education? What is that? What is it?
Well, Jimmy Carter was brilliant. And at one point, education was housed in the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare.
Right.
Yep.
HEW, that old place, right.
And that they had to pull some of that out because it was too much and it was too internally somewhat conflicting. So they pulled it out. Mary Frances Berry led it. The Department of Education deals with education writ large, from K through 12 to higher education, but also educational services and programs. Also, and you mentioned international, what we're going to lose the most with this shift is that they laid off the research staff. So little Jackie, Dr. Jackie, was using data from the Center for Educational Statistics, which compares us, the United States, to other countries and looks at the metrics with every country. Well, they've just laid all those people off. So, but ignorance doesn't want to know.
Mm.
So, they don't want to know where the issue. There's a piece that I look for every year and spend 3 or 4 days, Santita, locked in my office. It's called the condition of education, and it goes through all kinds of stuff. How many doctorates there were, how many black women got doctorates, or how many black people got doctorates, how many doctorates were in math and science, how many people graduated from college. That's going to be gone. They've laid off at least 800 people from the Centers for Educational Statistics. At
So
least
we
eight.
won't know who we've produced and therefore where we can place them, right?
or how we can improve what we're doing with,
Okay.
let's say, I mean, one of the biggest challenges, of course, is the whole STEM crisis, especially among African Americans. So when you have that data, you can say, okay, maybe we need to spend a little more money creating doctorates in education at HBCUs, because let's say Morgan State in particular, Howard University's Morgan produces more Black women PhDs in education than any place else, including MIT,
Mm.
because the president there, David Wilson, who has laser focus on some of those issues, has done things to support people in that area. So the data piece is going to be a huge thing. There are going to be so many things that are lost, Santita, because basically they've cut 1,300 people from the Department of Education so far. Um, all the testing issues that we use to talk about, we at Push Excel use some of these, for example, testing issues, because who's under testing? What's the testing gap? What do you do about it? Well, all those testing low. We the United States test lower than many other countries. Um, we don't want to know that. So
Well,
that
let me ask you this, just right there. Why do we test lower?
because we spend less, because we spend less and we spend less on the wrong people.
Okay.
If you're starting, your dad talks about this a lot. The good Reverend talks a lot about where do you start, in terms of accumulating knowledge. Where do you start? So lots of us in the civil rights community look at the race and says, who's racing with only one shoe? Who's racing, who's been held back for one lap and then let go to race? And so we don't invest properly, and because we don't invest properly, we get the results that we pay for. But it's going to get worse. Um, all the data on student achievement, we're not going to have any of that. And then, Santita, your intro was right on point, because these, what you call it, Moms for Liberty, whatever they are,
Mm-hmm.
they are going to be among the most hurt, because one of the things that Mary Frances Berry did, and others at the Department of Education, is shifted the focus a little bit to rural areas. We always look at urban areas because you get scale economies when you look at urban areas. They shifted focus a bit to rural areas. But and where are who lives in rural areas? So they will find services reduced as well. I mean, that's going to be the worst part, is just the reduction of services. School lunches, we don't know how that's going to survive. And again, Black people are poor disproportionately, but we are not the majority of poor people. So any child who is getting a school lunch, regardless of race, may feel something. They feel some kind of way. Um, but in any case, I think I over answered your question.
No,
But
no, you did not, because I was just talking with Dr. Wolf in the last segment, and I wanted you here because there is an economic element to education. And
absolutely.
well, many of us don't know that. Most of us can't get through econ in undergrad. Come on now. Nobody. Oh, we love Dr. Houchins. God bless you. May you rest in peace at Howard University, but nobody wanted to take his class, although he was brilliant. Yeah, he was.
I love me some Dr. Houchins. He was a trip, but he
He
was
was,
brilliant.
and
But
he
he
was a
but you could
trip.
not sit down with him without him giving you a history lesson that began at the Great Depression and ended at the present day.
But
So he
but that's important. I mean, because it contextualized everything, and that's why I'm saying you're contextualizing this, because we need to understand that everything is interconnected.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's why I want to know from you. It's you're not giving long, you're giving us detailed answers, because Dr. Malvo, most of us do not know what government does. We don't know. So when we hear you're firing all of these workers, these lazy workers, number one, we have fewer government workers than we did 80 years ago. Dr. Algernon Austin from the Center for Economic and Policy Research was on the show, gave us data, and we could check it. 4.5% of the workforce, when my parents were born, when Donald Trump was born, that was they were government workers. It was down to 1.5%. It will be many fewer workers very soon. And we don't even know if the firings or the layoffs are legal. That having been said, now we're talking about the education. And if you want to make the phone board light up, and you know this because you have your own radio show on WPFW every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, uh, talk about education. Maybe it's because it was something we were denied, Dr. Malvo, but nothing gets us as animated, particularly in the Black community, as education.
No, absolutely. We fought too hard for it. We were too frequently excluded from it. Brown versus Board of Education, of course, in
Hmm.
1954. There were a couple of cases before that, and one of the most poignant to me was a brother. I can't remember his name right now. He went to the University of Oklahoma Law School. He was the first to go. They would not let him sit in the classroom. He had to sit outside the classroom. And when the professor decided to be especially ugly, he might close the door. So the brother was just standing outside the classroom, sitting out. They put a desk for him outside the classroom. And he was sitting outside the classroom. When he could get a note or two in, he would. But if the professor wanted to be especially ugly, what would he do? He would close the door. Oh, he'd talk in a softer voice. So this brother did manage, after a couple of tries, to pass the Oklahoma bar, but imagine all the hurdles. So Black people get passionate about education because education is dear to us. Education is the way that we got over. And I spent I in addition to my radio show, one of the things I do is I'm a part of my church's morning meditation ministry. And from time to time, so surprise, surprise, tell Reverend I'm not completely a heathen. Um, but um, but after LA, I had to come back and do something. My pastor said, "You want to get on the scholarship committee?" I said, "I do that all the time." So I do morning meditation. But my meditation on Monday, we're doing a special series on Women's History Month, and I talked about Dr. Bethune, who went to then Bethune College with $1.50 to
Mhm,
start a university, and it's now Bethune Cookman University with all
mhm.
kinds of goodies, and that lets me segue. We've been passionate about education. People have done anything for it. People have walked to school and watching the buses ride by them um, to stop let white kids off, and the Black kids didn't have any transportation. So our history with education is passionate. And I mentioned Dr. Bethune for a couple of reasons. A, because I love talking about her. But B, when we talk about what's happening with education right now, Title One is the money that goes to schools that have a preponderance of low income students. So that's not Black schools, that's schools that have a preponderance of low income students. Title One is going to be severely cut. Again, that's going to affect these Moms for Liberty and others. Title Three is the part of the Department of Education, Higher Education Act that directs money to historically Black colleges and universities. I used Title III money when I got to Bennett for a number of things. I was happy to have it. It stood in the gap. I inherited some structural issues and I was able to fix them. I had a young lady fall on our pavement because it was so uneven and cracked something. It was a lot. It was an incident. But I was able to use. I had a great chief of staff, and he said, "Can we use?" He asked, "Can we use Title III money to pave this section of the campus where the pavement is so uneven? People were falling. You know. Anyway, we queried the Department of Education. They said, "Sure, it's educational purpose." So we were able to basically smooth that area of the campus up so people could walk around. And so Title III money is extremely essential. Usually it's treated as a president's discretionary grant. In other words, they just don't give you the money to spend. You have to write a proposal for it. But they have been pretty flexible about how you spend it. So that's how I was able to get pavement out of an education grant. But Title III is going to be cut as well. Um, what we're going to see is a reduced money, not only for schools that a lot of poor kids go to, but for all schools, we're going to see program cuts. And the one, Santita, that they all hurt me, of course. And when it comes to our kids, it hurts equally. But sure, a disproportionate number of children with disabilities are, guess what? Of color.
Mm-hmm.
Disability student services are going to be drastically cut. So you mentioned the IEP, Individual Education Plan. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of students who are disabled are on IEPs because their progress has been retarded. Much of that is going to be cut. I found an article last night, actually, before I knew I was going to be with you, and it talked about a school in Colorado that caters to disabled students.
Mm-hmm.
They've been told, and I should say students with disabilities to be precise,
Mm-hmm.
they've been told that they're going to have to cut their staff by half, which means that the guy who was quoted in this article said he's already started to inform parents that they're going to try to stand in the gap, but they don't know if they can because obviously they're being cut. He's taking a voluntary pay cut as the principal or head of school, but that doesn't, he still has to let people go. So this is what's going on. So program cuts are going to be counseling programs. I mentioned disability programs, STEM programs. Now I okay. You're going to get mad at me when I say this, but don't hear me out. If I didn't know any better, I would think the current president was a Russian plant because when we look at certain metrics, Russia is beating our behinds. China, India, Eastern Europe, we used to lead the world and we don't anymore. And some of that has to do with STEM, engineering. We're closing engineering programs while China is creating new engineering schools at the rate of about one a week.
See, you know what? I would just expand it globalist because see, our borders have been erased, and you have a lot of people who are running the world who do not have allegiance to any nation. I mean, these
Hmm.
corporations, they don't put America first, and I'm not America only, but I don't have a problem with saying, wait a minute, I need to protect the United States. That was the problem with NAFTA, as you recall, Dr. Malvo. And Reverend Jackson was almost by himself in opposing it, right? He and Ross Perot and some others said, we're going to lose a lot of jobs, everybody. A
Hmm.
lot of jobs. This is going to kill American manufacturing. Is that not what happened, Dr.
And
Malvo?
that is what happened. And
And
now,
so I'm
but
saying it's beyond because at some point toward after Gorbachev ushered in a rapprochement with with
mm,
with Russia as they and then they were breaking up and they said, okay, we're going to reunify Germany, and we want in on that. We're not going to have the USSR. We're going to be Russia. And all we asked is that you not expand NATO eastward. We lied. We said, yes, you're right. We won't do it. That's what this dispute about Ukraine is about. They said this is a bridge too far because now every country around me except Ukraine, and most people in Ukraine are Russian.
mhm.
Okay, that's where I'm coming from. And so I'm saying you have a lot of people who really don't care about borders. All they care about is their money. Look at the
They care
corporations.
about is profit. Yeah, the profits. They're about price, not just money. It's really excess profits. It's what
That,
they're
that that's my only pushback on that. I'm like, wait a minute, don't confine it to a country because there was a time when Russia had almost become our vassal state because they were ego. Remember, they wanted to be part of NATO.
that's right.
Okay, it's just we turned on them, and then all this stuff came off the rails. So I'm simply saying no one is taking up for us anymore here and just it at home. I don't know how you can have when you have, but you know what, Dr. Malvo, it's just come to me. Compliant people are ruled, educated people are governed.
Mhm.
And maybe we don't want educated people because educated people ask too many questions.
Well, there you have it. There is exactly where you have it. The educated people ask too many questions, and this is what gets the president more excised than anything else is the questions that people are asking about what's happening with the Department of Education or other things. I want to just so people understand what all else is going on. Give me a couple more minutes to talk about the limited access to services that's going to happen because of the
Mhm.
downsizing of the Department of Education. I mentioned lunches and counseling and tutoring.
So you mean
That's
just let me just I want to take that apart a bit. When you say lunches, I mean because many of our kids, that's where they eat,
yes, and
right?
that will be
That's
cut,
their meal for the day.
and that will be cut. So we're talking about school lunches. We're talking about all kinds of counseling, and we're talking about after-school tutoring programs that many schools that have students who are where there's an achievement gap, the tutoring helps them make a difference. You're going to see larger class sizes, Santita. Teachers are going to be cut. And one of the things we know with metrics is that one of the most effective ways to learn is to have a small class size. But when you cut teachers, you're going to increase class sizes, and that's how it's going to be. In higher ed, tuition is going to become less affordable. Um, yeah, college is going to become less affordable. And the inequality that the Department of Education has tried to deal with through a number of programs is that as opposed to closing the gap, it's going to increase the gap. So there's so many things. I mean, this is the 30,000 foot look at what's happening. And if we went down to 3,000, it's like that school I mentioned to you in Colorado, um, where school by school, you're going to see differences in educational quality. Where will educational quality remain? In high tuition private schools.
Well, what do you
That's
mean that the quality is going to change in public schools? Could you explain that?
well, teacher cuts, number one. Program cuts after school programs, number two. Um, less access, number three. And when the more students you have to deal with as a teacher, one of my sisters actually teaches. She's a lawyer and other stuff, but currently she's a substitute. And she says the sweet spot is about 20 kids. She said when you get 40 kids in a classroom, you
Mm.
cannot maintain order. And increasingly, she's going into schools even before this, and 40 kids, 42 kids, and she says they're in a 42 kid classroom. There are 10 kids that are going to be really bright. They're going to be engaged. They're going to raise their hand. And so they engage with you, you engage with them. There are going to be another 10 who sit in the back, make noise. She had one little girl who turned her radio on in the middle of the math lecture and re- refused to go to the principal's office.
What?
Simply refused. And so Marianne they have a panic button. She used the panic button to get the principal to come get the girl. The next day, the girl's mother and auntie came to the school. Ostensibly, they said they want to fight my sister. Now, first of all, I don't fool with those girls. They call me stuff like skinny and shorty because they're taller than me and they're more substantial than me. So I don't fool with those girls. So that's my three sisters. But Marianne told the lady, I'm not going to fight you on school grounds, but you can meet me back here when school is out. Well, they didn't come back because they got a good look at her and said, not going to fool with that. But and the girl is built. She plays tennis. I mean, she's very athletic. I like I said, I don't fool with them girls. If there's a dispute that involves physicality, I leave the room. I'm like,
But
I
I
ain't,
mean, well, that goes then. I mean, because I think about security in the schools. I'm sure they're not going to diminish that.
they
And so,
probably will. They probably will. As it is, I said, Marianne has a panic button. There's supposed to be a security guard on every corridor. There isn't. The panic button is for the principal to come to the classroom. So so no, security is going to go down. Everything's going to go down, and we're going to see a student achievement gap that's going to be frightening. But we won't be able to measure it because they cut all the research people.
no, we're just going to see it. We're going to see it in our universities, right? And
We'll see.
who
We'll see it
gets
everywhere.
admitted. Okay.
Yeah, in terms of who gets admitted, but we're also going to see it. Yeah,
Test scores, right?
exactly. And again, there is a whole research unit. There's a and I forget the name of this thing. There's a particular test that we give to young people at the fourth grade and the eighth grade, and it's an international test. So we give it, others give it, and then we do the measurement. They don't want to do that anymore. So we're we're falling behind without even knowing it because basically we don't care. I mean, my theory, not my theory, but when you cut education, you cut engagement, but you also cut the knowledge base. People who are not educated are more likely to hear anything, believe anything they hear. And when they believe anything they hear, they can be hoodwinked. And the hoodwinking is not just the lies that are told, but it's also what happens to our labor market. And
Mhm.
that's a whole other story. You want to, the nexus between education and economics is what's going to happen with our labor market when we cut our educational basis. What's going to happen to our workers? I predict, or I hope not, with the H-1B visa, which allows companies to bring in people um, from out of the country when they say they can't find qualified Americans. In the
Mhm.
Silicon Valley, you will find many of the engineers are on H-1B visas because they cannot find qualified Americans. So then the question becomes, why can't you find qualified Americans? What are you doing to create qualified Americans? And if you don't have qualified Americans, what is the long game here? And the long game here is to put people back into a state of near enslavement.
Yeah.
We will be forced to work for very low wages. If you look at Project 2025, we know that the part on labor starts with we are a Judeo Christian country and
Mhm.
we believe in the value of work. And it goes on to talk about cutting programs in the Department of Labor, which I predict will probably be next on the chopping block, except for the fact that they do like workforce development. But basically, people will be forced to work at any wage they can because we're going to cut public assistance, we're going to cut SNAP programs and all of that. So the long game is to re-enslave America, and I don't mean by race,
Period. Not by what you say, not by race,
right? Yeah,
by
just across the board by
so
class.
well, let's go back to that because when you enslave people who feel disempowered. Slaves are not born, right? They're created.
Yes,
And so when you frighten that the H-1B workers, don't get angry with them. They are frightened to death, everybody. That's why they're brought in, and they make less than they should if America were truly open and free, right? And
exactly.
so you got the tent partnership for refugees from the bottom, because there's a correlative at the bottom, everybody, with low skilled or unskilled workers. And then you have the highly skilled workers who are brought in who are indentured servants at the top. And so it seems like what did you say? I mean, America was built on unpaid and then poorly paid labor.
Yeah,
And is that what we're trying to recreate? Is that what you're saying?
it seems to me that that's what we're trying to recreate. It seems to me that we're disempowering people, and as we disempower them, we can agree to underpay them. The National Labor Relations Board, which adjudicates labor disputes, we did get a victory there. The sister who was there, Gwen Wilcox, uh, the president fired her, but she's a feisty black woman, and she went to court, and they were forced to reinstate her. However, the NLRB only has 3 members, now 2 Dems and 1 Republican. It's supposed to have 5. So what by firing her, what the president did was slow down the progress of the agency because they can't make any decisions without at least 3 people. So when they fired her, it was only 2 people, so they couldn't do anything. Now she's back and has to catch up, um, being out for a couple of months. She was one of the first fires he did. So they're there for protect workers,
Hmm.
and eliminating worker protections is yet another way towards disempowering workers, people, and we see that. I don't even know, Santita, to be honest with you. I don't even know what to say about any of this. We've survived worse. We have survived worse, and we will continue to survive. But it's a frightening situation for us as a people to be in.
Well, I mean, we're talking about
And not as a people, black people, as a nation.
yeah,
Everybody is
yeah.
everybody's being hit.
Well, let's move this over. We're talking with Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, president emeritus of Bennett College for Women, former dean, University of California, and just one of the most brilliant minds that we've had the privilege of having access to over the past, really in our history. Um, I want to know then, I mean, how, because everyone looks at the Department of Education, or should I say, the way that this has been pushed in media. This is going to deal with these little miscreant Black children in particular, Black and brown children, but particularly Black ones. And what you're saying is, no, not so fast. The Department of Education, the dismantling of it is going to hurt everybody. Let's move to how it hurts white children, middle class and poor, because more and more we don't have the middle class in the United States, Dr. Malvo.
No, we don't. So if we look at, you know, white children, if they're rural children, they're going to be very badly hit because there are lots of Department of Education programs that focus on rural areas because
Mhm.
many rural areas don't have access with transportation, other things. So many rural schools, there's, I forget which title it is, but there's a grant program for rural schools. That's going to be gone. And those are those Moms for Liberty, it's their schools with their kids. All these programs that we talked about, while Black people are disproportionately, Black students disproportionately experience disabilities, the majority of those with disabilities are what? White children. So they will be affected as well. White children eat student lunches. Um, we should, anything that I've mentioned is, you know, especially Black, it's white too. So we need to be clear that white children are at risk because of these Department of Education cuts. Now, as those white people, not the majority at all, who are wealthy or who are the top 10%, their parents will probably do a number of things to make up for the cuts. One, they will probably enroll them in high tuition private schools. Two, if they are in wealthy suburbs, they will probably increase the tax base for schools. I mean, municipalities have the ability to do that. So they will probably do some of that. Three, what we found in some of our urban schools in the past is that some of these wealthy PTA groups basically supplement what the schools are offering. So even though the schools may have a limited budget, if it's a if it's in Chevy Chase, Maryland, if it's in I don't know where the wealthiest areas in Chicago, if it's in you know, the Upper East Side of Manhattan, although most of those
Mhm.
kids don't go to public schools, but if they do, the PTAs do their own fundraising. They raise money so that those schools have everything they need,
But
literally
but
everything they need.
but you know, even with when you have neighborhoods where you have police officers and firefighters, they they have more resources, Dr. Malvo. You and I know that. You see, they have more resources, and therefore their schools have more resources. So in America, you don't have to be uh, wealthy. If you are white, you tend to get more resources. But what we're seeing is really we're watching them tear at everybody.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
and
everybody is
everybody's
about
gonna
to take
feel it.
a hit.
You know, every you know what's ironic here is that many said they supported the president because he was going to be better at the economy. Well, I'm
Mhm.
sure that Dr. Wolf told you he has not been better at the economy.
Give
The
me a
tariff
snapshot.
situation,
What you tell me. I want to
the,
hear from you.
the tariff situation is inflationary. It will cause more inflation. The deportation situation is inflationary. I don't see Americans, black or white or Latino, lining up to pick lettuce. Um, Mostly immigrant workers do that. So if the lettuce is not picked, we either farmers will see either well, prices will go up. They'll have to pay labor more and prices will go up. So the economy, this man has basically, and he jokes about, well, it's going to be a little bit of pain, No, there's going to be a lot of pain.
But
People
you
are,
know, wait a minute. When you listen to the World Economic Forum, because I mean, I think we focus on Trump. He's president. I get it. But you've got Klaus Schwab, and you've got Yuval Harari, who is like the Eminence grise of the big mind. He is the intellectual center of the World Economic Forum, who talks about useless people and useless
hmm,
eaters. And
hmm,
Klaus Schwab says that you will own nothing and you will like it. That's what they say. So what
that's
this
that's
is
their
this is
plan.
this I'm saying this is a globalist agenda, and it is now is part of the bloodstream of the United States. And we've been on a mission creep. They've been coming in for a long time, Dr. Malvo. So
Yes, they
I
have
think
to.
I mean, because when Trump is gone, the philosophy will still be here. I guess that's my point. I
Well,
mean,
they've laid the
focus.
foundations. They've laid the foundations for
I,
this zero people. The foundation for the contempt for the human condition.
and
That's
I'm
what
saying it started before now. We're seeing it now because we have someone who's so disagreeable, right? But it was started with people who had a smile.
it's.
NAFTA didn't start here. NAFTA was disastrous for us. This neoliberal, neocon economics has been a disaster. You know that.
Yes, it
And
has been.
that started with someone we liked, who we took umbrage with his politics, a lot of things. I mean, he did. This guy didn't do Gaddafi, and that happened on Democrats' watch.
Oh no,
And
you're absolutely right about that. I
and
mean,
now all his gold is gone. He was the second or third largest holder of gold bullion in the world. Now it's gone. It's gone. It's not gone. It's been stolen and is
yeah.
now being hoarded by the Western countries. So I'm saying, we are looking at now, tying all of this together because I want to bundle it all because this is why I wanted you in this particular segment. And I'm glad you were able to stay a little longer, a lot longer, because all of this is interconnected, Dr. Malvo, right? And I mean, we're looking at something as basic. You can't do anything if you haven't learned how to read, Dr. Malvo.
There you have it. You can't get a job. You can't do anything. But that's what we're.
You can't go to the first grade. You have this young child, this young girl from Connecticut who's suing
Yes,
the
she
public school
graduated with
system.
honors and she can't read.
But that happened in Detroit too some years ago. No
I
one paid
remember
attention
with the
to that.
University
Remember
of
that?
Michigan young people.
And this young kid who graduated at the top of his class at the Detroit public schools, he went to school in Florida. He found out he was illiterate. We're doing this. I mean, what help me to understand some remedies because I know there are things that we can do. Everybody call number one, call 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. That is Congress. You need to call Congress, who are a co-equal branch of government, to the executive branch and tell them, make the case for the Department of Education. I want you to do that, Dr. Malvo. Make the case for the Department of Education.
Education is our future. No education, no future for America. No measurement, we don't know where we are. This is like saying, here's where you need to go, but you can't have a map. Figure
Oof.
it out. Because the stats give us the map to say what we need to do. So if without education, there is no future for America. There is no future for our economic growth. There is no future not only for our young people, for our elders, for our veterans, many of whom, large numbers of veterans enrolled in college,
Mm-hmm.
finishing high school, GED programs. Without education, there simply is no future. If we can't revive it now, I would agree with every Republican I've seen on anything who says, well, yes, but there's fraud, waste, and abuse. Well, not as much as you think. And
But
most
and
of
not as much as in the Pentagon.
no, no. And note that the legislation that the Congress has proposed has more than $13 billion of domestic cuts, but a $7 billion increase for the Department of Defense.
Who
Even
can't
as
pass an audit?
yes, so but I and it, I if you're calling Congress, say education is our future, and I've asked pointed questions. What do you think is going to happen in rural areas? What do you expect to happen with school lunches? What about counseling? What about disabled students? What about our HBCUs? Just ask, what do you think is going to happen?
Women,
And
I
what
guess
do
in
you feel about
indigenous colleges,
Yes,
the colleges that focus on the Latino population. I
yes,
mean, all of these institutions are endangered, right?
exactly. I'm very concerned with our HBCUs for any number of reasons.
Hmm.
So first, there are two things. One is the big picture, the policy piece. What's the small to medium sized picture? I love the '60s. That's when I came of age. Um, and protested. I was a baby Panther. Da 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 da. But one of the things that we did on Saturdays is we did Saturday schools.
Hmm.
So, whether we were at our churches, at our community centers, we would all read something, usually, like, of course, Miles' little red book. We read the red book all the time and could quote the red book. I'm not sure that that's the best education. I'm just not suggesting that for your children. But it, Saturday schools did two things. They brought us together, created community, but also they expanded education. People are complaining about what's going to happen with Black history without, with this anti DEI stuff. I didn't learn Black history in school. I
That,
learned it in the Saturday schools. I learned it at home. I mean, I'm looking now
I
at
learned it at Breadbasket and Push. I'm like, why would you? I mean, you explained to me as an educator, because Dr. Carter G. Woodson said this: you don't let your oppressor teach you about yourself. I mean, I'm paraphrasing it. I mean,
Malcolm said, why let your enemy have access to your children's minds?
I mean, so, so I'm like, okay, let them have that. As a matter of fact, I don't want you to touch that. Jewish people don't let other people touch their history. They teach their children their history themselves. And I respect that. That's important because how am I going to let the hunter tell the prey their own story? That's crazy.
It is crazy, but we've gotten lazy in terms of community development. We've gotten very lazy about investing in our young people.
Have we gotten lazy or are we just we wanted acceptance so badly, Dr. Malvo? I
Yeah,
mean, we had an opportunity to keep the Negro leagues, the Negro baseball leagues. That was the biggest Black business in America. But when we got the opportunity to go, and they said, "Look, keep your Negro leagues because you all are great competitors." Because really, wink, wink, nod, nod. The best players in the world are over there.
yeah.
So, but we said, no, 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 no. We'll fold this because we want to be a part of what you're doing,
You see,
Dr. Malvo.
integration is a trick bag. Integration is a trick bag. It assumes and believes the white man's ice is colder. It
Yeah.
assumes and believes that because it's majority, it's because it's white, really, not majority. Because it's white, it's better. And we know good and well that it isn't. This is why, I mean, this is, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. We believe that the white man's ice is
Thank you. And of course, you can hear her on WPFW every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. She deserves your support because she keeps it 100 and she's so brilliant. I've got about 3 minutes left here, and I want you to have the runway to say what you have to say because as you're watching, I mean, you're one of the foremost educators in the country, and you have seen the resources at MIT because you benefited from them. That's where you did your graduate work. But you also saw the brilliant minds at Bennett, at A&T, yeah, Johnson C. Smith. You saw some of the most brilliant minds who were just looking for an opportunity.
just looking for an
Bella.
opportunity. And the contrast is amazing. If you look at an MIT lab, you would want for nothing. Um,
Hmm.
with our labs, I on more than one occasion had to go begging, uh, basically corporations, science companies, can you please give me 3 microscopes? Because we didn't have everything that we needed. Um, and part of it, of course, is a chronic underfunding of HBCUs. Part of it is the fact that we Black people do not support our HBCUs in the way that we should.
Hmm.
And I just put that out there. We don't give
Don't. Howard is so robust. Half the budget comes from the federal government, y'all.
And
Okay.
that's and now Republicans do like education. I think it would be very difficult. They like higher education. The Bushes, as an example, were great supporters of HBCUs.
Yeah.
Bob and Elizabeth Dole have been great supporters of HBCUs. In fact, Dr. Janetta Cole was able to get them to do some fundraising for Bennett.
But
And
they've
they,
always done that, and they continue to. Quite frankly, they
oh
do.
yeah,
They do.
but meanwhile, back at the ranch, this man who's slashing and burning everything he can get his hands on, we're not sure that the Howard appropriation is going to stand, because their attitude is let's cut everything. The
Everything.
other appropriation, although it probably has a better chance of standing than Howard, would be the Gallaudet appropriation, the
Mm-hmm.
school for the deaf, which also has those are the only two colleges that have
Mhm.
a federal appropriation.
Which
But
is
why
in Washington. Which is in Washington.
Washington? Yes. Uh, I'm concerned. I am concerned. But as I call your congressperson, ask them, without education, there is no future. Please be careful with the Department of Education. Raise the questions. We know that large class sizes have a negative effect on a child's ability to learn. Like I said, Marianne Malvo told me, she said about 20 students is a sweet spot. The
Mm-hmm.
average number of students in a classroom, in a K through 12 classroom today, hovers around 30, 31. So well past a sweet spot. 150 times, 150, yeah, 150% larger than the sweet spot. So when you have that many young people, somebody's being left behind. And everybody wants to talk about the bad kids. There are some bad kids out there, like the little girl with the radio. But the bigger concern for me is the silent kids. The young people come, they sit in their desk, they don't say anything. Maybe they're doodling, maybe they're whatever they're doing. No one's paying attention to them.
No.
And we have to pay attention. Though they're going to be citizens too. They're going to be people too. People, I mean, they're going to be part of the problem if we don't fix it. We have
Well,
issues.
and so is that girl with the radio. I don't know where she's coming from. And if you don't have a counselor who can talk to her, because, it's just like there's a tie between drug addiction and isolation.
Yeah.
My brothers, my sister, and I were very blessed. We never got off into any of that, but our parents gave us no space. We didn't live in isolation at all. We lived in community with each other and with others. And a lot of people going home to, and we all have stuff, but a lot of people going home to a lot. And it's the teacher, it's the counselor who catches it.
Yes.
Because you're spending the
The
majority of your
counselor is going to be cut.
Yeah.
And we're going to pay for this. We're going to pay for this in any number of ways. People who are ignored are angry.
Mm-hmm.
Their anger plays out some kind of way somewhere. And sometimes it plays out in the streets in terms of crime, but sometimes it plays out interiorly. People self-medicate, hurt themselves. Sometimes it plays out like I would have loved to, and I wrote this thing in jest. Nobody would print it because it was kind of rude.
No.
But I said I want to do IQ tests on the Proud Boys, just to see. I mean, we know those tests are not necessarily accurate, but what base of ignorance were they coming from?
Well, there is a lot of our pain and frustration manifests itself in a lot of different ways. And because we talked about the Proud Boys and not to them, there's a lot of information that we don't have. Because I'd like to sit down and understand, okay, now what's your mission? And give me your worldview. We've got to do that. And maybe, and I will look for some Proud Boys and some Oath Keepers and bring them on. Because not the least of this reason, I mean, not the least of this reasoning is they're wandering the halls of Congress right now, everybody. Oh, yeah. That's what the legacy media are not telling you. They are literally walking through the halls of the U.S. House of Representatives in particular. Okay? Because it's easier to get into the Capitol on that side than it is to get into the Senate office building. Okay? The People's House.
Right.
So what we need to do is start, we can talk about each other, but we need to start talking with each other, because at the end of the day, we will all be infected. We will all be infected.
Mhm.
And we will all be be unprotected by all of this unplugging that's going on. Not the least of which, Dr. Malvo, and I want you to come back and talk about this, is the true state of the economy. Do we have any money? I've heard too many congresspersons on um, on C-SPAN, and they've mentioned this word that no one ever wants to talk about: insolvency.
That part.
That
And it's worth considering. It's worth thinking about. We actually, I have never been as concerned about deficits as I am now. And the reason for the concern now is that many of our deficits have been propped up by international monetary relationships.
Mhm.
We're now shredding. I mean, this man has come in and basically upended decades of cooperative international relationships that while other countries benefited, they mostly benefited us. And it's a benefit that we're now walking away from. We're saying, okay, oh well, because no country can live in isolation, but that seems to be what this president wants to do with the United States. We live in a world that has blurring boundaries.
Mhm.
Our currency being the currency that has been the currency of choice for the world.
Well,
But when you start messing with Europe, I mean, the head of NATO has talked about the euro now being the default currency.
that's what I mean. These people, the man wanted to go into Fort Knox. I said, well, is it all the gold there? Is the gold there? No, 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 no. Because that was the question after 9/11. Remember that?
Yes,
So there's something going on here. I'm not, you can call me conspiracist if you want to. That's not what I am. I listen to people, and so I start asking questions. All I need you to do is answer them and allay my anxieties. How about
that,
that?
well, I'm happy to come back anytime, as you know. Um,
Well, I got to catch you in between all the other things that you do, but I want you to come back and talk about that, because I need you to talk about, help us to lay out how we're supposed to make it. Martin O'Malley, the former governor of Maryland, said, and I got about a minute here, that he said this 2 or 3 weeks ago, we have 30 to 90 days. If you're getting Social Security, the system, more than likely, we're looking at collapse. You better save your money. People don't have money to save. I got
exactly.
30 seconds for you, Dr. Malvo. What do you say to
Well,
people?
that says keep your pennies, stack your pennies. Don't spend if you don't have to.
Yeah.
And understand that when you don't spend, when you do spend, you're enabling the oppressor, frankly.
Hmm.
So if I mean, you got to eat, you got to pay your mortgage. You do not have to buy new clothes. You do not have to. I mean, I just one of my young people was over here.
Did you see the look on my face?
Yeah, I did. I might have the same look, but one of my young ones was over here on Saturday, and she said, "Doc, there's a new boutique down the street." She said, "Let's walk down there." I said, "Honey, go in my closet. You can have three things." Um,
I'm
because
with you. Yeah, because I'm purging as we speak, and you know that. I mean,
we have got, we
mm,
are if you fasten your seatbelt, we're in for a ride. And for those of you people who I'm not dogging you, if you voted for the current president, you did what you needed to do. But now you need to it's called a FAFO moment. Fool
well, you
around.
know what? Well, the thing is, you thought people were looking for some answers. See, the Democrats messed up by pushing out Bernie and pushing him under the bus. Okay,
Yes.
because the biggest competitor, the person who bested Trump in the polling, was Bernie Sanders. But the Democrats, i.e., another set of globalists on that side, did not want him. So this is what we got. This is their fault too, Dr. Malvo.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not thrilled with the Democrats at all. I'm not
No, no,
thrilled.
I'm just saying we need to stop, because we need to understand that power does not know party. Power knows party. Power knows power. That's it.
There you go. There you go.
Elon Musk would have been up under what would have been up under the arm of Kamala Harris, because that's power. He's just trying to get something done.
He's
I
he's
mean,
trying to increase his profits. Is what he's trying to do.
I'm saying Ellison,
I
all
mean,
of
turn
them.
the White
Mark
House
Zuckerberg,
lawn into a used car lot.
but
I
I mean,
mean,
but Mark Zuckerberg, all of them trying to do that. That's all. Bezos, that's what they're all doing. They're all doing that. So we need to understand. We need to understand that
Oh, absolutely.
that's what they're doing. So now what are we going to do? Call 202-224-3121. Call these congressmen, call in both houses and tell them what you want and more than that, what you need. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, WPFW, everybody, 9 a.m. every Monday morning. You can catch her on Keep Up Alive too. And I'm sending you so much love, everybody. Brilliant economist, president emeritus of Bennett College for Women. And I am Santita Jackson. God bless you. Have a good one, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.